We are at the Aston Rowant Nature Reserve, which is just outside High Wycombe, in search of the red kites that populate this valley. It's very close to the scene in the opening credits of The Vicar of Dibley, where you drive down through a cutting in the chalk hills into one of the home counties, I guess it is. And so a breeding pair of red kites were introduced to this valley, I don't know, it must be over 10 years ago now, and they've done incredibly well. And now there's a very, very active population of red kites down here, and this is quite a good spot to see them because they're quite often out hunting and just riding the thermals over the motorway, and from here they're at eye level, but it's a bit murky today, so I don't really know if we'll see anything, but you never know your luck. I wonder what the hell this was. Looks like it was a bomb crater or something. As ever, nature has taken over, repaired itself. Oh, so a total of 93 birds, mainly from Spain. What a breeding pair. 93 of them were introduced between 1989 and 94. Today there are more than 1,800 pairs of red kites breeding in the Chilterns. Gentlemen, alright? Yeah, not a bad spot for lunch, is it?
Lovely.
Hoping to see a kite or two, but it's a bit murky, isn't it?
Yeah, they'll all be out there. I saw one about 20 minutes ago. Driving up there.
Yeah, I saw a couple as I was driving in, but we'll see. I'll be patient. In the mid-1500s, an Act of Parliament put the price of 1 penny on the head of every kite killed. Wow, they're scavengers. Red kites have the peculiar habit of stealing clothing from washing lines and collect other items to decorate their nests, such as scraps of plastic and even teddy bears. How bizarre. Well, let's hope. We'll go for a little walk anyway. I can't get into the hotel till 3 o'clock. Not particularly want to go to the venue. I would have nothing to do and would just be in the way of the technicians, and we wouldn't want that, would we? So that was a group of firemen who have come here for their lunch. And who can we name them? Oh, there's one, okay. My usual complaint about the GoPro being terrible for zooming in applies here. It's a shame. And this chalk underfoot is quite slippery. But it's such a lovely place. Such a great view. Shame about the noise of the motorway, but there we are, money talks. There is a theory that the reason the M40 was built was because a succession of transport ministers in the British government had been to a university in Oxford and a certain amount of favouritism was exercised in deciding who should get a motorway next. Whether that's true or not, I shall leave it to my learned viewers. I could research it if I could be bothered, but I can't, so I won't. Bit thin on the ground, the old kites today. But nice to be out of the cities. Nice to be in the country. So we're nearing the end now of the Tubular Bells reimagined by Robin A. Smith 50th anniversary UK tour, October-November 2024. I've got a lot of footage to edit, which I'll do over the next month or so. And the gigs have been great. We've done over 100 shows now, and it's kind of etched in, I would say. It takes care of itself pretty much. Audiences have still been really good reaction. And I'm still enjoying playing it. That's not a kite up there, that's more like a crow or something. Kites tend to soar and glide, that's flapping. We are, to quote the title of one of my favourite Underworld tunes, Kiteless. I can spot one down there. I guess as the sun's not out, there's not really any powerful thermals coming off the tarmac. I guess he's got a thermal coming up, or if not a thermal, certainly a wind current coming up or that hillside, I would imagine. Though there's not really that much wind around. Now he's gone behind the other side of the hill. Alright, we'll go. Oh no, he's come back, there he is. Sorry, you're probably not seeing any of this. I'll try zooming in when I edit it, but slippery. Fucking hell. What the hell is this? Something to do with fencing? It's got these sort of toothed cogs with a ratchet pawl on them. Maybe for tensioning wire fencing? Anyone that knows, please put it in the comments. Right, all I've got to do now is get back down this without skinning the ginty, as my wife puts it. A charming Scottish expression. I'm led to believe, Your Honour. Should have bought the Timberlands. There we are. Okay. First of all, Daisy, give us a brief potted biog of how you got into music. I mean,
What?
Well, you know, why did you start singing?
All my family musicians. My two older sisters are singers, and so I started singing from a really young age. And when I was really young, like sort of between the ages of like 10 and 14, I was kind of quite good. And then I quite quickly, sort of something happened with my voice, and I sort of stopped being good, and I found it really hard. So I sort of stopped singing after that, and went in a different direction when I did philosophy at university, and then I became a chef for 10 years. And then I kind of realised as I was chefing, which is a very difficult job, that no one wants to do unless you really want to do it. You know, you have to really want to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and work 90-hour weeks. I realised that what I really wanted to be doing was singing, and that when I sort of started singing properly again, I realised that my voice had settled, and so it was much easier. So I got back into it, and eventually, actually, I had a dream. I literally woke up from a dream, and in the dream I was a singer, and I was really happy, and I woke up and I thought, hang on, what am I doing? And I just actually that very day decided to quit my job and retrain.
Okay.
So that's what I did.
And where did you go to train?
I spent a year sort of teaching myself and trying to get people to teach me, and then and failing to get into music college, and then I eventually got into the Royal Northern College of Music. Went there for 2 years for my masters, and
Okay.
I graduated in 2022. So it's actually all quite recent for me, really.
That is. And was that all classical music?
Yeah, so before that, when I was younger, I did do, I did a bit of classical singing, but I actually did a lot of jazz as well. I had a jazz band, and we did covers, we did jazz standards, and we also did original stuff. But it was really hard to organise the lads into a band.
Yeah,
it was an absolute nightmare. And my ex-boyfriend was in it as well, which didn't help. So
that's difficult. So, philosophising chef, singer Daisy Bevan, how did you get the Tubular Bells gig?
Very sort of weird connection, actually. Michael Stevens, who used to sort of run this production, I think, for Fiery Angel, which was our old production company. I did a gig with him. He's sort of an old sort of family friend, really. Everyone in the classical music world knows each other. And the job belonged to another girl called Amy Carson, who's a lovely girl. Hi, Amy. And she didn't want to do all the dates, so I ended up doing most of the dates for the first tour, and then just stayed. She's got lovely children and wants to be at home a bit more, I think. So, whereas I'm just footloose and fancy free, I wanted to tour.
Amy knows my two nephews, Dan and Richard Baker, who
Oh, really?
taught at Blandford. I think she went.
Oh yeah,
to
yeah, she
Blandford,
did.
so
Yeah.
She knows them. Yeah. Okay. Great. So you've done all the shows except the Festival Hall and tragically the Australian
The Australian tour, yeah.
tour. So how do you think the performance has developed over the shows that we've done so far?
Well, first of all, for me, I now know it off by heart, which took a long time to learn. I mean, there's knowing it off by heart, and then there's really knowing
Right.
it deep in your bones, you know.
Yeah.
So that's changed. Performance-wise, the band feels like it changes every time we have a new tour. It feels like the band is different. And so, I mean, it actually is physically different sometimes, but it's just the feel of it. Every venue's different. Every gig feels different. So when I actually look back to the beginning, it's done a weird growth thing from everyone being absolutely shit scared at the beginning to everyone maybe getting a bit bored. That happens sometimes,
Okay.
you know, and with doing a million shows, and then it kind of ebbs and flows into kind of finding new things about it that you find interesting, and settles into a place of happy contentment with being on stage, I think.
What do you think people were scared of?
Getting it wrong.
There's a favourite quote of a Hungarian lady violinist who was a child prodigy, touring the world at the age of 16, playing the classical violin solo repertoire, and then she gave it up to raise a family. But she wrote some wonderful books about performance, and she said musicians who come through the conservatoire system tend to be so afraid of making mistakes that they forget to play the music.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. Especially when it's really technically hard music. I mean, this is a different kind of gig for me than normal, I guess, in many ways. For one reason being that I've got it singing with a microphone, which actually takes the pressure off quite a lot.
Right.
You know, normally I sing unmiked, and so you're using a voice in a different way. It's a lot more physically demanding normally. So this is actually, you know, not an easy gig, but it's hard in different ways than normal. And so I don't know, because I'm not, for me personally, because it's not so technically difficult, I actually find it easier in a way just to kind of let go. And I'm not singing any words, but I always feel like I'm singing something.
That's really
Someone came up to me the other day at the end of a gig and said, this little old man, like a sort of wizard, came up and said, Vox Humanis. I was like, sorry, what? Vox Humanis, that's what it is. And he was like, that's what you do with your voice. And I was like, wow, there's actually a name for it, for what Mike Oldfield's written there, which is just singing with your soul, kind of thing.
Voice.
The
Yeah,
human
absolutely.
Voice, yeah. So anyway, so that just means for me, it's not so technically demanding, but you know, sometimes it's all you can do to get through something that's so hard, so technically difficult. So then it is hard to play the music, because you have to be technically assured to be able to let go.
But the point of technique is to be able to rise above technique.
Yeah, 100%.
And I mean, you look at really, really heavily trained jazz players, and they have so much technique that when they play simple stuff, it's always absolutely immaculate. The challenge is getting them to play simple stuff.
Yeah.
They don't like it.
It's just the same in cooking, actually.
Really?
Yeah, because the more trained you are, the more you tend to want to refine things and overcomplicate them. But actually, you know, the hardest thing to do is just to make a loaf of bread and put a bit of butter on it. You know.
One of my favourite bits of cooking film that I've ever watched was Gordon Ramsay, and for once he was being quite nice. And he asked a prospective chef. He said, "Right, make me some scrambled eggs." Which you'd think is simple, but actually it's not. And he did this thing where he just said, just cook them gently, just keep it moving, you know, so they don't go dry and stringy. And the simplicity, there's a beauty in simplicity. And sometimes, particularly when you're playing music that's primarily improvised, you've got a huge amount of freedom and the discipline not to overdo it.
Yeah.
is something that's really hard to learn.
Yeah.
But
Know when to shut up, basically.
Yeah. Keith Richards said, silence is the canvas on which we paint. Don't be afraid of the white space. Don't be afraid to stop. And Jeff Beck always impressed me with the way he paid as much attention to the end of his notes as he does to the beginning of them. He always ends a phrase in a musically interesting way. And for me, each note is defined partly by the silences either side of it.
Yeah.
And that shapes it.
They always say to us well, a good coach will always say, pay attention to the small notes, and the pauses or the silences in between are just as important as the things you're singing, the notes you're singing.
Yeah.
Anyway, God, we got very serious there.
Wow. I thought you were going to be flippant. You said you were going to be flippant. Yeah, you haven't really got
You're asking me really serious questions.
Sorry. Okay, well, let's get on to some trivia then. What show do you remember most fondly?
I don't remember any of the shows. No, I do. No, I do. The shows up north are always class, because Northerners, I don't know whether they just know how to have fun more, or they're just louder, but the audiences are always crazy, and that is just thrilling. But also, any performance that I have someone that I know in the audience is always a special show. Okay. And I did a show the other day, actually, which is always going to stay with me, which my mum came to. Hi, Mum. First one that she came to, and I'd actually just got some incredibly good news just before the show, and the feeling of elation carried on all the way through the show, and that was definitely one of the best shows I've ever done, ever. So you want to share your good news with the my few dozen watchers? Well, it might not mean much to you guys, but it's really amazing for me that I'm joining Garsington Opera House next summer as an Alvarez Young artist. So that just means I'm employed at Garsington next year, which is, it's a tricky thing to get. It's hard. Well, congratulations. Thank you. On behalf of all of us. I'm sure you'll do brilliantly. Is there a show that you remember with horror? I'm thinking the first one I ever did, St David's in Cardiff. St David's Hall, that is, in Cardiff, was scary for everyone, because it was the first time we'd actually done a gig all together as that band. Right. But I don't remember it being horrific. I just remember it being pretty exciting, actually. But I kind of thrive off the drama. So, okay. To be honest, if anything ever goes wrong, I'm happy. Okay, that's a worry, Daisy. And I know when we played the Bridgewater Hall in Manchester, it was a big deal for you and Kwesi. Yeah, it's a big venue. Classical thing. That's there are certain venues that are sort of on your tick list of things, but that was pretty special, especially as it looked to me like it was sold out as well, and it was just like, unfortunately, classical music gigs are so rarely sold out. They're even so rarely even half sold out. It's really? So to night after night play to big audiences of sold out venues is incredible anyway, and then let alone Bridgewater Hall, something like that. It is. I always get people say at the end of the show, they say, "God, you must be shattered." I said, "No, I'm invigorated." Probably the opposite, yeah. Because I've just had the love of 2,000 people hurled at me. It feels great. And lust. Love and lust. Well, I wouldn't go that far. In your case, Jane. And also, you're just about to have a beer, so... I'm normally halfway into my first one by then. Yeah. What do you think of Tubular Bells as a piece within the context of what you normally do? I didn't know Tubular Bells coming into this. Now I know it very, very well. And I absolutely adore it. I cannot believe... It's a bit like when you first listen to Mozart or something, and then someone says to you when you're a kid, Mozart was 4 years old when he composed this. Like, what? That's crazy. But I mean, it's just as crazy, really, for someone who was 17 to have written something this complicated, B, this beautiful, and C, this long lasting. Well, I mean, indeed, my God, people are still obsessed with it. My nephew, he's now 13, but when he first discovered Tubular Bells, he was 9, and he was obsessed with it. Wow. Hi, Albie. He still hasn't come to see the show, but he's at school, so it's tricky for him. But yeah, I think it's an amazing piece of music, and I never ever get bored of playing it, and I never will. And if this ever ends, I'm going to be very sad.
Oh, I think he has a gift for sublime melodies. You know, the peace section which Kwesi plays so beautifully.
Yeah.
I mean, he did, but there's always, for me, there's a difference between what you would call writing, which would normally be called composing, and what guys like Mike Oldfield did, which is sit around with a guitar
sort of
fucking
noodling,
about and recording the bits that you know he thought were really good. And it's a much less considered approach and more of a instinctive approach.
Yeah.
But it's not to take away from it, and it is a staggering, you know, piece of music. I mean, I've played it in a lot of different
close to
formats.
1 billion times.
Well, I've played it in different formats. You know, I've played it with a guy who insists on note for note until I say no, I'm not doing it. I can't do that. I played it as a power trio with the late lamented Phil Spalding, which was really interesting.
But it's also a really nice thing about it is that an interesting thing about it as a piece is that it can be played in so many different ways. It's still intrinsically what it is. It's still recognisably Tubular Bells, but you know, Robin has changed it somewhat. You know, has added to it. It's still what it is, but it sort of grows. It can grow, which is really special. You don't get that with much classical music because it's treated so reverently.
Yeah.
But there are rules about that kind of thing. So there are literal rules about changing music and things. And there are ways in which you can change pieces. Like if you were going to sing Schubert songs or things like that, then you can sing them in different keys, which changes it quite a lot. And there are things you can add, and obviously, like, you know, different types of music, Baroque music, you can add all sorts of bits and bobs to make it sound different. But
well, all the Mozart solo piano
cadenzas
had improvised cadenzas.
Yeah, exactly.
Another of my favourite quotes, and I can't remember who said it, but they deserve a medal for saying it, is excessive reverence for the canon leads to tyranny.
Yeah.
And that thing of going, oh no, that's the way you have to play it. You can't do anything with it, you know.
I was just going to ask you to explain what that meant because I'm too thick. I don't
Sorry?
understand. I was going to ask you to explain what that meant.
Well, it's the thing. I mean, when we first started doing this, I did a lot of research watching Mike playing it live because I knew that there were going to be Uber fans who were going to be coming up saying, you didn't play it like the record. Yeah. But Mike never played it like the record either.
No.
And for
he
me,
probably couldn't.
A piece of music is a living thing, and as soon as the only time a living thing stops changing is when it dies.
Yeah.
So by trying to preserve it in some perceived golden version, you're actually killing it, which doesn't go down too well with the Uber fans, but there we are. Okay, what's your favourite bit to do in your part?
In my part?
Yeah.
The end of the ambient guitars bit at the end of Tubular Bells 2. For obvious reasons, Jay.
Yeah, because we've persuaded you to come to the front of stage and take your rightful place and soak
as
up
Queen of the Bells.
Adulation of your fans. Okay, what's your favourite bit in the show?
Tubular Bells 2, just because I just love the music so much. It weirdly reminds me of, you know, the Carnival of the Animals. Was his name Sassel? I can't remember who's by. Sassel? I can't remember. Anyway, there's the bit called Aquarium, which is. Do you know that bit?
No, I don't.
You'd recognise it. Yeah,
yeah.
You'll know what I mean because it's used in so many things. But for some reason, Tubular Bells 2 reminds me of that. It's just really beautiful and sort of like I would imagine like I'm a little fish going through the water, seeing all the sort of seaweed and.
Except for the caveman bit.
Yeah, but that's quite fun, that bit.
Yeah, for me, he was never a convincing rock player, and it's not quite.
Mike, if you're watching this, I do not share Jay's views, okay?
But the first part of it, I mean, he was doing sort of ambient and chill out and systems music, you know, before anybody else. And it's beautiful. It's a lovely bit, especially you kind of get the feeling that having got to the end of side one, with its thrilling climax and all of that, he kind of went, okay, I can relax now.
Yeah.
And just let it float out.
But it's gorgeous. I love it. That's my favourite bit. The whole of Tubular Bells 2.
What's the hardest bit in the show for you?
No, if I'm thinking, it's not. I don't find it very hard anymore because we've done it so many times and I'm really used to it, and I've done all the counting. I still have to count quite a lot in the show. I do have to, if anyone's watching me very closely, they can see my fingers do that as I go through the piece. But so I do have to still count. But back in the day, before I knew it so well, Tubular Bells 2 was so hard. I mean, I don't know if you probably not even aware of what I'm doing because what you're doing is so involved as well, but I'm singing different things that sound very similar, but they're different over what sounds very similar over and over again, but actually it's different.
Yes.
So it's like the same, and now I know it so well, it's okay, and I can relax and everything, but I still have to count. I mean, how many times I've done the show and I'm still counting.
And there's no obvious timing reference in it to me. There's not an obvious downbeat.
No.
Once you know it, it's there. Okay, where have the best audiences been?
Oh, I answered this earlier, but up north.
I find Scotland particularly, and I don't, you sit
Scotland.
I mean, we did the Fairfield Halls in Croydon. It's the first London audience I've played to for a while, and they kind of sit there and go, "Yeah, go on then, impress me."
Well, that's your perception of it. I mean, it might just be that was a Sunday night and they were tired and the hall wasn't full or whatever. But I don't know, Glasgow was insane, and that was the first show this tour, and it really started the whole tour off with a bang. So if you're from Glasgow, thanks. Thank you. No, that was Northern Irish. Whoops.
Any funny moments you can recall?
I mean, most of the funny moments happen off stage, but the other day in the show, I don't know if you noticed because you were right next to me, but I sat down and opened my water bottle, which was it was a different water bottle than normal, and it exploded all over me and the stage. Did you notice that?
No, I didn't.
No one noticed apart from probably the first.
In?
It was the end of the gem. The beginning of the gem. I sat down, opened it, and it went. I was soaking wet, absolutely soaking, and it was all over the floor. It looked like I just sort of like spat all over the floor. But that was quite funny for me.
That's the only bit of the show that I still have to count. And for me, counting the silences is the hardest bit.
Yeah.
Most pop music works in sort of 8 or 16 bar chunks. So instead of counting 1, 2, blah blah blah, 63, 64, 65. Oh, she's nice. Oh bugger, where was I?
Yeah.
I count them in phrases, and I kind of see them in a weird OCD way as a left-hand phrase and a right-hand phrase. So if it's 64 phrases, it's 8 bar phrases. So it's 4 left-hand ones and 4 right-hand ones.
Yeah.
That's the only bit I have to count. So you managed to dry yourself off, and
the lights were so hot in there that it did dry eventually, but unfortunately no one else saw that happen, so it was just funny to me. But I also find when things go wrong, it's obviously funny, and when people shout things out that hasn't happened this tour, but the first tour we had a few hecklers, which I love.
I had my own personal heckler in Ipswich who came to Southend on the last show. On the last tour.
Oh yeah? What did they say?
Gee, you're the man! He's a Scottish guy who lives on the island.
You're the man.
And
That's quite a nice heckle.
It was quite a nice heckle.
Yeah, normally it's like, where's Mike Oldfield?
Yeah, we had 1 or 2 of those, didn't we?
Yeah.
Have you got a message for your audience?
Thanks for coming, first and foremost. Because, there's nothing... I mean, we're doing it for you, but we're doing it for many reasons, really, but we are actually doing it for the fans of Tubular Bells, Mike Oldfield and the music. And, we couldn't do it without you, but you also give us life. I mean, there's nothing like playing to a welcoming audience that want to hear what you've got to give them. Yeah. So thanks for coming. Secondly, please come again so that we can carry on doing the tours over and over again. That's what we want to do. Okay. We want to do this forever.
Okay.
And also...
Nice.
Tell Robin, every time you come to a show and you come and meet us afterwards and we sign autographs or whatever, find Robin, tell him that I'm your favourite, and then he will keep employing me.
No chance of that with me. And finally, I think you've kind of answered this. What are the technical challenges for you in the show?
Well, there are singing technique challenges. Like I'm singing with many different parts of my voice, which is not necessarily something that I was even asked to do really by Robin, but it's something that's how my performance has evolved. Is that I've decided to do certain phrases in certain technical ways. It may not even really make any difference to you listening to it. You wouldn't maybe even know that I'm doing that, but I am doing that. I'm doing some things in chest voice, some things in head voice, sometimes with vibrato, sometimes I'm doing just letting go and using my natural full operatic sound. And sometimes I'm really holding back and just using the microphone as a sort of tool to enhance something weird that I'm doing with my throat or whatever, I don't know.
Okay.
So there's technical challenges, which, you know, I have not actually, touch wood, been ill and done a show. So I've not had to go through doing those things whilst not being well enough to do them.
What about working with monitors?
I don't have any monitors. Oh, you mean like in-ear monitors?
Yeah.
Oh, that's, well, I have one ear in, one ear out.
Okay.
I need to be able to hear myself ambiently as well as in my ears. That is impossible.
Yeah.
Pitching with your ears like that doesn't
No.
work for a singer.
And how are you
Anyway,
enjoying the touring life?
I love that touring life.
Sorry?
I love that touring life. I do. I love everyone in the tour. Everyone's brilliant. They're all great friends. I'm going to be friends with forever. I love travelling. I just don't like being at home. I get cabin fever. Not all the time, obviously. It's nice being at home for a bit, but I don't like staying at home for long periods of time. So I love travelling. I've got quite a lot of free time compared to other people in the band, so I do quite a lot of exploring. Who doesn't like staying in a hotel room, not having to clean it, just leaving your towels all over the floor, not making a bed.
Oh, indeed.
And breakfast every day cooked for you.
Made for you, yeah.
Love that.
Indeed. Anything else you want to say?
I think we've covered most things.
In that case, philosopher, chef and soprano Daisy Bevan, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jay. Let's go for a beer.